You know, the sales community it's a small community. All the sales trainers, all the guys that are out there. I think you have, you know, like you see God use a guy like David. You know, David ends up becomes a favorite, but David made pretty much all the mistakes you can, and then boom, you know. I think there's an opportunity there for the younger generation to learn from you in a way that maybe somebody else is not going to be able to pass that down to them.
Sure, and that's what the good thing about the movie, because it created a platform for me, right?
That's right.
So that's what I take that seriously, which is why, like when you talk about things like Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. I know you want to talk about that, and you know that's why I've come out not against Bitcoin per se. I don't think Bitcoin's a scam. But there's scams being perpetrated around Bitcoin that are very dangerous for people that don't know better. And that's why I'm very concerned about it right now, because to the average person who's never been through this before, you know, you could very easily get caught up in something that's going to cost you all your money.
Have you invested yet?
No, not a penny.
Zero. Not Litecoin, not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, none of it.
At this point, I can't, because ethically, I've come out heavily against it. And it will not be fixed. The only thing I would do is I would short futures. That would mean I'd have a financial axe to grind, which would make my opinion suspect. So I've decided to stay clear of the whole investment side of the equation. Instead, you know, I'm constantly going on all the TV news, CNN, Fox. They're all asking me to go on their shows, because I think I have a very unique purview into what's going on, because Bitcoin is so much like a penny stock. It's almost the perfect penny stock.
See, I remember penny stocks. As a broker, I was so excited about penny stocks. You know,
Bitcoin. Well, you know, Bitcoin is
same world.
The thing with Bitcoin is, you know, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak, because it's supposed to be a currency, but no one uses it as a currency. It's an investment vehicle. So
let me ask you this. Let's look at both sides. Okay, let's say Bitcoin becomes what you say it is, which is it's a bubble. It's not going to work out. People lose $20 billion. Let's just say that goes away. Okay, but let's look at the other side. If it does become, hypothetically.
It won't, though.
But let's just say if it does.
It won't.
I understand that, but let's just say if we go in the direction where cryptocurrency is done by, let's just say, Goldman Sachs.
And I believe that will happen. That will happen.
That a Goldman's going to do it, and they're going to control the market. Somebody with a lot of credibility.
Absolutely.
If that
100%.
does happen, who gets hurt the most? What corporations, what industries get hurt the most?
It's the little people that get hurt.
Do you think the little people or the big banks?
No. People have this whole thing wrong, what's going on right now with this cryptocurrency. There's nothing different about cryptocurrency than any other currency. Listen, Bitcoin was started by some people that were not scam artists. They were not looking to break any laws. They were people that were almost like financial anarchists in a way, but there was a social experiment on alternative money.
Sure.
It's never going to be that.
Young guys, by the way.
It's not going to be that. That's a naive way of looking at it. It's never going to happen. You actually think that the U.S. government and China and Japan and they're going to allow? There's just no way.
I'm on your side.
It will never happen.
The regulations said they're not going to let that happen.
No, it will never happen. It can't happen. However, the technology itself is excellent. It's beautiful. It's elegant, and there's a place for that technology. For not just cryptocurrency, whether it's futures, anything that tracking investments through a blockchain technology is an elegant technology. It will never ever be. Besides the fact that there's fundamental problems with Bitcoin that will not allow it to ever really be used as a currency in mass. That's not the issue.
You're saying that'll never happen as a mass?
No, I don't believe so. No.
So what do you think is going to be? Think it's going to be credit and cash? You don't think we'll be a cashless society?
No, I think that what's going to happen is that blockchain technology will be adopted, and one day, probably very soon, one of the big banks or a consortium of banks in conjunction with the government will have a cryptocurrency, but there's no different than regular currency. It's the same. Here's the thing about Bitcoin. As a currency, Bitcoin is no more useful at 20,000 than at $100. Yeah. It still works, whether it's $100 or $2 billion, you could still use Bitcoin as a currency, right? It doesn't, because you could divide it up a million times. So the only reason it's running up is because it's not being used as a currency. It's being used for wild speculation. And what's happening is that there's two sides to every equation when you come to anything that's trading publicly. And that is, there's the market capitalization, which in Bitcoin is, they're saying it's 200 billion some odd dollars, right? But that's irrelevant. All that matters when something is trading is what's called the float. How much is actually out there that's being bought and sold? Almost all of Bitcoin is locked away and is not trading. You have this tiny, so there's $200 billion in market cap. There's probably 2 million or 4, 5, $10 million at the most trading of it. So when you have a very thin market cap like that, it's easy to manipulate it. And what happens is once you buy Bitcoin, it's not so easy to sell it. It's a hassle to sell it. So it keeps getting thinner and thinner, which is why you have these wild swings. And then the latest thing, this latest joke of Bitcoin was this guy. I mean, I just saw something happen, which is here's a guy who's an insider in this Bitcoin thing, exchange or something, right? And the guy is long, massive amount of Bitcoin, rides up the wave, right? He sells his Bitcoin, and then he announces, after he sells it, he announces, I've sold all my Bitcoin, it's worthless, get out of Bitcoin, and I put everything into Bitcash. And guess what happens? Bitcash then runs up 100. Why do you think Bitcash is running up? This guy's got a lot of power. That's classic manipulating the market.
I mean, that happened in 1929 with Joseph Kennedy. This is nothing new.
It's classic manipulation. So it's because if this guy did not have a bad intent, you know what he would have done? He would have done that trade and shut up. What was the reason? Why would he say it publicly? I've sold all my Bitcoin, buy Bitcash. All he's going to do is, it's a classic pump and dump.
So my question, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Whether or not they can solve some of the technical problems that plague Bitcoin, long transaction times, right?
Fees,
everything, the whole thing, right? It's
yeah.
not designed correctly for mass use, right? There's too much negative, there's too much damage done to powerful institutions and government. They cannot let it.
Stay
It will
on
never
that.
happen.
Well, let's go over there. Okay, let's go over there. So, I parked my car outside. It said coins. I said, I don't have any coins. Who has coins nowadays? So I'm going to get a ticket. I said, it's okay. It's $75. I'll pay the ticket.
Well, most meters have these, you can use credit cards.
This one didn't have credit.
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned.
Yeah, okay, so no problem. California, I get it. So I come in and I'm thinking in my mind, what portion of the expenditure that you and I use today's coins? Probably 0.1%, let's just say, if we process it that way. What percentage is cash? I don't think it's that high where it's cash. What percentage is credit? Let's say 80%, 90%.
Yeah.
Would you say that's around right there?
Okay.
You think Bitcoin will ever be a 5, 10, 20%?
No, it's
Okay.
not.
So
I think you're completely off. In other words, forget Bitcoin. Bitcoin is never going anywhere, in my opinion. Okay, never. Blockchain technology, it'll be behind the scenes on your credit card. It'll be behind the scenes on your stock transfers. In other words, there's uses for blockchain technology and all these. It's a great technology, and it'll be behind the scenes, tracking things, making things cheaper. But you'll still have all the financial institutions all clipping you anyway. But they'll be using it to make their expenses lower, to make things more elegant around the world. But it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, so I heard you talk about Bitcoin, and I said, man, I got like 6 or 7 more questions I want to ask this guy. I want you to get deeper.
I know listen, I know I'm right, okay? Here's what I know. I promise you this. One day, in the not so distant future, all these young kids, they're going to say, what the hell were we thinking? That Bitcoin is 20,000. It's nothing. It's not. It's almost like a joke.
Yeah. My concern is not, I'm going to put my money, like, how these guys say, by the way, think about Shamat. Shamat is the guy, I don't know if you know Shamat from Facebook. He's a part owner of Golden State. He's saying you put money in Bitcoin today, in the next 20 years, it's probably going to be $1 million, and in the next 10 years, it's going to be $100,000. Like, that's what he's saying. Okay. Right. So you got your side.
He was never in the penny stock market, okay? He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I'm with you. But you got to realize the market, the best thing about the market is you got 2 opinions. Even with politics, you got left, you got right, you kind of hear them out and weigh it out. There's a part that says that. There's a part that says it's going to be $2. There's no difference between $2 or $20,000. That's not my argument. My argument is more my concern. Are we going in a direction where the banks, because if you said central banks are not going to give up control, because you look at political elections, a lot of times the person that controls the super delegates is the guy or the gal who has the money from the big bank. So I see Bitcoin's biggest enemy being banks, politicians, and the government that may come in and say, I'm not going to give them that much control to you.
Listen, the government, the biggest thing that the government is worried about of all crimes, you know what the one thing they hate more than anything? Money laundering. You actually think
that's a question we have to answer series 7.
You actually think that you're going to allow this technology to run rampant where everyone can launder money, and it's never going to, not even a freaking possibility, okay? Why do you think that Bitcoin is constantly being plagued by scams? Why is it? The people who did it weren't scam. The guys who founded it were not scam artists. They weren't. They were legitimate guys that were doing an experiment.
Sure.
And they had a good idea, right?
Yep.
This technology is flawed. It's flawed in the sense that it opens itself up to be manipulated. It's like the perfect storm for manipulation. In the 1980s, we had things called blind pools. Remember blind pools? Blind pools were the biggest scam ever. And that's what all of these coins are. They're blind pools where you raise money and you issue paper, which is big, and it's a limited amount, right? And so it's finite. And then with blind pools, you would say, one day we'll figure out we're going to buy something with the money. Well, with this, we're not even buying anything, right? But the point is, money's being raised, you're creating value, and there's nothing behind it. All you're doing is running on scarcity. That model is not going to last because
You're putting this in that category?
Oh, it's even worse though.
Would you say it's the same as credit swaps as well, like similar to what happened with the mortgage?
Well, there's a woman who's behind this whole thing also. Was the girl who founded, I forgot her name, the woman who was one of the primary designers of credit swaps is now trying to get Bitcoin used for the same thing because she doesn't care.
So you put them in the same pool?
Well, not the same pool. It's very different. In other words, Bitcoin is just what you're doing is that you're taking something. The scam that's going on right now is something was designed to be used as a currency, and it's being used as an investment vehicle. That's what's going on. Okay, there is no real currency going on. It's like this tiny for Bitcoin. No one for all the action in Bitcoin around the world. What do you think is really being used as a currency? Like virtually nothing. So it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're saying it's a currency. It's not being used as a currency. It's not particularly well suited as a currency for all the reasons we already spoke about. And now they say, well, the Bitcoin Cash is better. Bottom line is this, okay? When this thing is adopted, it'll be by governments in the mainstream, and these people, a lot of them will end up in jail. The ones who
you think they'll end up not the founders. You're talking about the guys that are manipulating.
The guys that are manipulating stuff. The guys that are doing the wrong stuff. They're going to end up in jail. Okay, and the investors. What's going to happen with Bitcoin is going to be a black swan event in the next 6 months. I'm not I'm not saying Bitcoin's going down. It might go to 50,000. I wouldn't short Bitcoin for a second right now. I don't know where it's going over the short. I know where it's going over the long term.
You're on the outside. You're just kind of looking to see what's going to do.
I'm not saying it's going down. In fact, most of the interviews I said I think it's going up. Now I'm not so sure right now because the insiders now I see a classic pump and dump happening right now where they're already on the dump on Bitcoin going into the next one, which is Bitcash, right? So I see that happening. So let's see, if someone. The only way Bitcoin is going up is if someone's got an axe to it. If there are people out there wanting to manipulate it, it'll go higher. Otherwise, it could be close to the end. Remember this, with Tulip Mania, the beginning of the end was when they started trading futures in tulips. That was it. Once they started trading it, over 6 months later, right? So people look at this, they're trading futures, yay, like it's legitimate. No, it's not. The people that are trading legitimate are no more than the credit fault. So it's a complete joke. I know for a fact. I just know. Nothing is guaranteed in life. Okay, I have never been more sure of something. Okay, that ends really, really badly for people.
That's great.
I'm not saying don't invest in it now, but be really, really careful. Make sure that you have a way out really quickly. Okay, don't put in more than you can afford to lose. And just realize that you are on the outside looking in of people who are on the inside who have a plan that you don't know about, and all you're doing is trying to guess when they're going to screw you.